Hi there. This is really a test. I'm just testing how this Facebook Live works. I thought I'd go through Margot's statement a little bit. I don't really intend to go all the way through it. I'll read a bit of it out. Okay. Margot Burns, that's her first name's been changed. Contacted the author of this site, that's me, in August, stating that she'd been forced to help Edward Wayne Edwards prepare a postcard to the San Francisco Chronicle in March 1971. Margot was age 18, pregnant, but unmarried. She was terrorized by Edwards from January to April 1971. Edwards implied that he shot his mother in 1938, confessed to the murders of Elizabeth Short in 1947, Stephanie Bryan in 1955, and Pauline Stein on 11th of October 1969. Many years later, Edwards confessed to planting the remains of Lacey Peterson in April 2003. Okay, to start with the timeline of events, according to Margot. Okay, her brother George attended the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in the Presidio, San Francisco, together with Darren Burns, first name changed. Margot's mother had thrown her out of the house in Galt, California, because Margot called her stepfather a SOB. Margot was working in a bakery after school in the evenings for school credits. Margot's mother called the bakery owner Mrs. S and told her Margot was kicked out. Mrs. S took Margot to get her clothes off of her mother's lawn and took Margot home to live in her house with her family. Mrs. S told Margot her stepfather was a SOB. George brought his group of friends to Mrs. S's house and introduced Margot to Darren. Darren and George both studied Russian, and all of the boys were analysts. Okay, I'm going to skip now a little bit about some of the background. Okay, around October 1970, Margot moved into a tiny apartment at 1020B South River Road in West Sacramento, which had been converted from half of the garage of the single-story house where her sister was living with 7 children. Margot wasn't renting from her sister, though. It was a rental property in a camp, which had a store where rent was paid. The rent was $50 a month, including utilities. In mid-December 1970, a woman calling herself Lucy moved into the apartment, converted from the other half of the garage. The next day, Margot met Lucy. That weekend, Margot went to Lucy's apartment for potato gravy and biscuits and met an Italian-American man who identified himself as John, who later introduced her to Edwards. Probably just should clarify there that he actually was using a code name Frankie Johnson, although he used John at one point. Anyway, 1971. Around 1st of January 1971, Margot went again to Lucy's apartment and believed she was drugged. Margot says, I was taken to the warehouse after I was drugged. That was to be where I was staying, locked away until I gave birth. I was only taken back to the apartment because I told the madam who my brother was. She told John she liked me. I was a good girl and was a keeper. She told him he should take me home. It was then that I became his cover girl. Margot's explained the idea of his cover girl to me. It's quite complex. It's basically sort of disguise, camouflage, so he looks like he's not what he is. I was later told that other pregnant women were kept there until they gave birth. Then the other babies were sold to an attorney in San Francisco. It was John who told me how the babies were gotten and sold. Okay, the whorehouse was a 3-story Victorian house, but because she was drugged, Margot has no idea where it was. She looked in vain for it on Google Maps. Sometime in January, February, John took Margot to a nearby hotel room where Edward S. Montgomery was staying. John left them together for an hour or two while he took care of some business. Montgomery told her he was a Pulitzer Prize winner and about the cases of Carol Chessman, Barbara Graham, and Burton Abbott, who was executed for Stephanie Bryan's murder. Montgomery claimed all 3 were innocent. In March, Edwards prepared and sent the Pines card. Margot had to help him prepare it. The card was to be hand-delivered to the post office on March the 22nd, 1971. This is the same day the Zodiac Killer Leads article was published in the Akron Beacon Journal, in which Edwards anonymously claimed another prison at Deer Lodge could be the Zodiac Killer. A copy of the article was found in his papers, which his daughter had kept, page 69 in John Cameron's book. John Cameron confirmed that Edwards was the source with his wife Kay and the journalist. There's more details of the Pines card further down. On April the 7th, Carol took Margot to her house as Margot's baby was due. Oh, yeah. Margot's daughter was born the next day at Sutton Memorial Hospital. Okay, these are not terribly important. Just little details filling in. Okay, later events. Sometime after April 13th, 2003, Edwards must have visited Margot and told her how he planted the body of Lacey Peterson. Margot has objects in her possession that she never bought. They just appeared. Okay, so we've got pictures of this strange Egyptian book. Margot said, I didn't know how the things came to me in my possession, books that I never would have gotten myself. In fact, I threw one of the books away after I looked inside it. Edwards also showed Margot images from Tim Holt comic books. We're explaining details in them. I'll scroll down. In 2015, Margot became aware of John Cameron's investigation and remembered Edward S. Montgomery telling her about the Burton Abbott case. She then started with difficulty to recover memories of Edwards. Edwards appears to have used a combination of inducing extreme fear, drugs, and post-hypnotic suggestion to suppress Margot's memories until after Edwards' death. I've discussed this a lot with Margot. It's a bit like when you're riding a bicycle or even driving a car, and your attention is totally focused elsewhere, and you're not recording memories of what you're actually doing. So when you come out of that state, you don't really know what you've done for the last 5, 10, 20 minutes, however long it is. So there are these strange hypnotic states where you're not really recording memory, even though you are awake. You're just not conscious of your immediate surroundings. Instead, your mind's elsewhere. Okay, anyway. Margot has a medical condition. I'll skip over that, but it's potentially dangerous because she's got adrenal insufficiency, and she has to have injections to bring adrenaline back down if she gets stressed. Okay, the death of Edward's mother. Edwards told Margot she was a time capsule. He explained to her the circumstances of his mother's death. He told me about the gangrene, the red streak shooting out from it, and how it was red hot to the touch. He told me about her saying, they shoot horses, don't they? And her crying out in agony, it burns, over and over. He said she was a little woman and that she couldn't reach the trigger on the rifle. He then said, you don't think you could shoot herself in the stomach, do you? And this is confirmed by Edwards's NCIC records, which really show he was born May the 30th, 1928, and not June the 14th, 1933. He produced fake credentials somehow or other. I've actually suspected the FBI actually helped him with that. That's another story. How he had these means to make all these fake credentials. I think he was basically an FBI informant, and that they'd probably given him this stuff. I don't suspect he just went and found it on his own. Anyway, the Zodiac Halloween card. Besides forcing Margaret to help make the Pines card, Edwards told her about the Zodiac Halloween card. Okay, there's explanation here. I won't read it out. Also, the dripping pen card. Margot said, well, that's not a knife, it's a dog tail. Backwards dog equals God. Ed said he was God. He said tail equals tail, tail equals story, story equals history. History repeats itself, starting with his mother. His history is dripping with blood. He told me about the pen too, but I haven't remembered it yet. Okay, and now we'll get on to the Zodiac Pines card details. Margot had to trim news cuttings. This was sent March 22nd, 2000. Oh God, why does it say 2017? That's wrong. That should be March the 22nd, 1971. How that happened. I'm going to edit that before I go any further. Otherwise, I'll never remember to do it later. What is that? Oh, that is. That happened. 1971. Okay, let's update that. Carry on. Okay, so where were we? Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit out of the pine card. But so the main, well, so he pointed out, he explained that his name was Charles and his middle name was Wayne. Charles Wayne is a bright circumpolar aster of the northern side, said to represent a wagon or a cart. And there's also around in the snow. I don't need to tell Mark about that, but anyway, it's all quite complicated, so you need to think about it for a bit to explain that. He also made a little cross on the. I'll sort of point to where it is. I wonder if I can do that. Yeah, it's just there. Okay. And the three monkeys are here, but it's easier to see them on this one. They're sort of here, 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 and here. And yeah, we've got the around in the snow. This sort of goes round and round and round here, and the cart's in the middle, is what I think. Yeah, okay. Well, that was quite fun explaining that interactively. Identification. Yeah, I've got all sorts of identifying features that I'm not publishing because, yeah, they sort of might be semi-secret, so I don't want to sort of yeah, keep them under wraps. But I have confirmed some of them with April, in fact. Although, yeah, she wasn't able to confirm an awful lot, but some things like he doesn't. I mean, it's not clear whether they're totally unpublic, like the things like his tattoo. But there are other things that I confirmed, like the type of paper airplane he made. But unfortunately, April didn't know about that. Anyway, Elizabeth Short confession. Edwards told Margot he murdered 22-year-old Elizabeth Short in Los Angeles in 1947. This is a huge, huge part of the whole thing. Edwards was taking everything back to 1947 and this website that he made about the case. I won't read out the details of the other details of that. And then he confessed Stephanie Bryan, 14-year-old Stephanie Bryan, last seen April 28th, 1955. And this is the Burton Abbott case, which was all linked to Ed Montgomery, because Ed Montgomery actually led Edwards joined the search party that Ed Montgomery was leading and actually led Montgomery to the body. I don't know how much Montgomery knew about what was happening, but yeah, in the report from the district attorney files, you can see Leroy Myers of Reading, auto salesman, mayor. Who's mayor? Anyway, but I think that was Ed under a false name. That was just the sort of name he would use. I think it's an auto salesman. Okay. And Margot said, gave quite an emotional statement about Stephanie Bryan and how painful it is for her to remember. And Margot's got daughters, granddaughters, and a great granddaughter. Okay. And then Edwards also described the murder of Paulie Stein, and I'm going to skip over that. There's some. Margot's sent me this image that shows where he went, and there's a building that's no longer that wasn't there, but been built afterwards. Okay, finally we've got Lacey Peterson's confession. Edwards visited Margot sometime after April 13th, 2003. And the important thing to understand is Margot doesn't really know where, because she wasn't. When she woke up in the morning, she wasn't aware that anything had happened. Edwards had somehow sort of hypnotized her in the night and suppressed the memories. So it's quite weird, but somehow he did it. Okay. Anyway, Margot. He told Margot how the remains of Lacey Peterson were planted. Edwards drove, and two men brought a raft with Lacey's remains. It's important to understand this raft. I thought she meant a sort of homemade raft, but I think it was this Zodiac Nautic inflatable, because there's also a news report about that sort of boat being driven, and I'm pretty sure that was Lacey's body being moved on the 12th of February. Okay, Margot, he told me about the parking the car and walking past the tree, going past the puddle and walking and taking a walk down to where he could direct how the body was positioned. The raft floated between the two rocks and the body was lifted to the flat rock. Okay. Edwards also told Margot that Jean-Paul was one of the two men he directed to plant Lacey's remains, and Jean-Paul was paid for his help with Ice Ice Baby, which is like that's a song, a very well-known song if you listen to it, and it means crystal meth. Okay, and there's a diagram of how he walked past the tree and down to where Lacey's body was found. Also, Edwards gave Margot a detailed description of where the remains were discovered. Obviously, I can't validate that because that would be in sealed evidence, because she was under a tarpaulin, obviously in all the published photos. And then Margot got very excited when I showed her the photo of the puddle at Yeah, from the website. It's just a tiny photo, but you can actually see the puddle by the tree, and that would be due to the storm a couple of days earlier. Okay, and the other thing is Edward said to Margot about Lacey turned her every which way but loose, which is the title of a 1972 song by Eddie Rabbitt, and it's a clue to the alias Edwards was using. That's really involved. I mean, it takes a bit of getting your head round, but he was using these musical clues to plant memories in her head somehow. In addition, Margot was taken to Tracy Airport and shown a fancy private plane with leather seats. And he told her he could pilot a plane. So Ed was actually flying around. Although I haven't got an independent verification of that, but it seems that he was. I don't think whether his family ever knew about it. I don't think they did, which is pretty amazing if that's true. But anyway, I think that's right. Okay, and the credibility. I've found Margot totally credible when I've been chatting to her on by Facebook Messenger. I mean, it's not quite like a face-to-face chat, is it? But and she showed me all sorts of documents. There's no doubt she exists, and I've also got some knowledge of things that she doesn't want to share in public. But I've been able to verify that from public sources as well. And okay, I think that will do for now. I'm going to scroll right back up, and maybe another day I'll make something about the Black Dahlia, 1957, Elizabeth Short. That's all for now.